In this video, we're going to do a real example of a WordPress site migration. So I'm going to show you how you can take a WordPress site, host it on one host, move it over to another server, step by step, over the shoulder, real examples. So in this case, I've got a WordPress site hosted on Hostinger. I'm going to take it and move it over to Vultr. These are the steps I'm going to use. I'm going to make a copy of the WordPress site. I'm going to use a WordPress plugin to do that. I'm going to set up hosting on the new server. I'm going to use Vultr, as I said before. Then we're going to set up SSL on the new host. This is a little tricky because if you don't have the DNS pointed at the new host, you want to leave your old website live, for example, while this is happening. You can actually install a certificate on there, but that's a little tricky. I'll show you a workaround to do this step. A lot of places don't cover how to do this, and I think this is a really important step if you want to make sure you do a nice seamless transition with no downtime. So I'll show you exactly how I do that. And then change the hosts file on my PC to access the new server with the domain name. So I can access the new server while the rest of the internet still sees the old server. So I don't get any downtime. People still see the live website while I'm doing all this work in the background, which is important. And then while I have done that, I can actually upload the files from the old server onto the new server, change the DNS to point to the new server. At that point, I can actually set up SSL renewal now that that DNS is pointed to the new server. And then we're basically all done. There is an easier method. We can actually just go step one and then change the DNS straight away. And then that does make it a bit easier, but visitors to the website will see a broken website while this is all happening, which is okay if it's a new website or a website with no traffic. Maybe that you'd prefer to do it that way. But if you've got a live website with traffic and you don't want anyone noticing that you've moved servers, this is a nice seamless way of proceeding. So I thought I'd just mention that. You don't actually have to do this method. You can do an easier method if you'd prefer. So, and I'd also note that many hosts will actually do this to you. So when you move over to Cloudways or SiteGround, you can just contact their support. They'll actually do all this for you. I think for a lot of people, this is the most technically difficult task they'll ever do with a WordPress website. And in most cases, you don't actually need to do it yourself. Your new host will probably be able to manage it for you. And if not, there's some quite cheap services like on Fiverr. I'll put links in the description to some Fiverr gigs that will do this job for you if you think it sounds quite difficult. But I actually want to show you guys an example of how you can change servers from one to another. It's not that hard, but it's probably something that's quite daunting for a lot of you. And I would say if you've never done it before, try it on a test website. Get a cheap domain like a .xyz or even one of those Freenom ones that I showed for free a few months ago. You could actually set up a test website and try moving it from one place to the other before you try this on a real life website that actually has any importance. So you get familiar with this process before you had to try it for real, I would recommend. So with that out of the way, let's get on with our tutorial. So this is the example website that we're going to migrate for our example. So Idea Test Site is where this is hosted currently. This is just a template WooCommerce example store. So I've currently got this hosted over on Hostinger on the premium web hosting plan here. So I'm going to take it from this hosting. I'm going to make a copy of it and I'm going to upload it onto a Vultr server. I'm going to get this running over on Vultr. So I'm going to take the domain, move it over here, and I'm going to run it in Plesk for this example. So I'm going to use the Plesk panel here, but this will work similarly on other panels. It doesn't really matter. Just for this example, I like using Vultr and Plesk. So I'll show you exactly how to do all this. Let's get started. So as we can see, I'm already logged into our WordPress site as admin here, and under our plugins, we're going to use a plugin to do the migration. So if you actually go to plugins and search for migration, there's a few that will do the job. All-in-one migration is the most popular, but we've also got one called Duplicator, and Vivid is also one I've had some success with. But this one is my favorite. But this current version, the free version, is not particularly functional. I'd much prefer using an older one. So I'll link in the description to Shamim, who's hosted the version 6.77 here. I much prefer using this one. So just head to that link over on GitHub and you can actually grab that. So I'm just going to grab that zip file. I'll download that and wait for this one to download. There we go. And then back under plugins, we can actually add new and we can upload the plugins. So I'm going to choose that file that I just downloaded there. There we go. And we're going to install that one. And we can click activate. So there we go. We've got all-in-one migration there. And basically all we do from here is we export that to a file And it's going to say preparing to export. This can take a while. If you've got a very big website, this can take a while. This is a small demo website, so this is not going to take very long. So there we go. It's all done. As we can see, it's only 487 megabytes. We can just download that now. But if you've got, a 10 gigabyte big WordPress site, that could actually take a while. But especially if the hosting is slow. This hosting was quite good. So let's go ahead and download that one. That's going to take a few minutes on my Australian internet. So I'll come back in a few minutes when this one's downloaded. Okay, so that download is all finished, so we can head to our next step. So basically, we're going to take that file and move it over to our new server. So my new server is over on Vultr. I'm using Plesk as my panel here. I put a link to a Vultr and Plesk tutorial if you're interested in using this exact setup, but this will work on pretty much any other panel capable of hosting WordPress, as we're using this fairly simple plugin to do everything. So I'm going to set up our domain that we're using today. So that was idea test site. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to be using a WordPress site to do this, and I'm going to put that in here. So idea test site will go in there in my case, but you'll put your domain name in there. I'm going to add that domain, let it do its thing here. So it's going to create a WordPress site. Now we may get a DNS error because we're still using our hosting DNS here. We haven't set up the DNS to point to this new IP address yet because we want to keep our old website up and running while we do this process. So let's go ahead and fill out this form. If you get an error like that down there, that's totally normal. I'm going to close that one off because we obviously still want to keep our website up and running while we do this process in the background. We don't want downtime while we're doing our migration. So let's go ahead, fill this form out. So it doesn't actually matter the title and stuff that we choose here. That's going to get overwritten by our migration file just in a minute. But make sure you take a note of the administrator username and password because we are going to use those a bit later to log in to do this stuff here. So I've got mine there, and let's go ahead and install WordPress on our new server. So just wait for this to install. Looks like that is ticking away there. And here it's going to ask us to install plugins here. We can say no thanks. So that looks all good. Now, one thing I noticed is this has defaulted to an older version of PHP. So we can actually open the PHP settings and change it to a newer version of PHP before we go any further here. So let's go ahead and increase that to 8.2 there. And while we're here, let's change the upload max file size because this 2 megabytes is going to be way too small for what we're going to do today. So I'm going to make that 2000 megabytes and we're going to save that in. Scroll down, click apply. I think that looks all good. There we go. Now, if you don't actually have your version 8 of your PHP on here, I'll show you how to actually install new versions of PHP in Plesk if you've got that issue. So under Plesk Tools and Settings, you can go to Plesk Updates there. And this is where you can actually add additional components to Plesk here. So you've got Plesk, we've got web hosting there. We can expand that menu and you should find PHP there. This is where you can add or remove versions of PHP. So you can actually tick any of the things that you need and then you can go ahead and add them. But I've already got 8.1, 8.2 on here. So I'd recommend using a current version of PHP to do this if you don't have it already. So anyway, where were we? We're back on WordPress here. And one other little thing I noticed was there is a vulnerability. Let's check what that is. Oh, it's just asking for WordPress 6.2. We're currently using 6.1. We can actually do that through WordPress a bit later. So that is nothing to worry about. So now we have our blank WordPress set up on our new server. But if we go to open it, we can see it's still pointing to our old hosting a site here. We still want to leave that hosting a site running live on the internet while we do this process. So I'm going to show you how you can access the new server through your computer while you still leave your old website live on the internet while this is all happening. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing we'll need is our IP address. So on Plesk, we can just go back to our home page screen here and we can get our IP address pretty quickly. It should just be sitting around there. There it is, IP address. We can go ahead and copy that. That's the IP address of our new server. And we're going to go to Notepad. So we want to find Notepad as running it as administrator. So go to your start menu and click search. And I'm going to type in Notepad here, find it. There we go. And run that, right click and run that as administrator. And there we go. And then we open our host file. So that is under open and we're going to head to C, Windows, System 32, and that will be under drivers, etc. Should be in here. If we look at all files, we find one called hosts. There we go. And this is where we put in, I'll show you how to do this. We put in our IP address. So that is the IP address we got from Plesk. and we're going to point that to idea test site. So that is all you need. While we're doing this, we put that line in there. When we're finished with it, we can actually put a hash there and that will blank it out. But let's actually do this, make it live on our computer while leaving the old website on hosting a live on the internet. So my computer is actually going to see our new server. So let's close that out. And now if I go to idea test site, I'm going to see a SSL warning because I don't have an SSL certificate on here yet. So I'm going to skip through that. But I will be able to see our new blank WordPress site that we've got on our Vultr server. So that looks all good. So what I might do now is actually put an SSL certificate on here. So when this new site goes live, it's got SSL installed. This is a little tricky because the DNS isn't pointed to it. So it can be hard. We can't actually use Plesk to issue an SSL certificate, but we can just use another tool to issue a SSL certificate manually. So there's a couple of ways of doing that online. If you actually Google free SSL generator, there's SSL for free, and there is punchsalad.com has a good tool on there as well. So you can use this one or this one. Well, I quite like the Punch Salad. So shout out to Tools with Punch for hosting this tool because this is a very easy way of doing it. So this is optional. If you don't mind working with the SSL warning on your site and having the SSL warning on your site for a few minutes while the transfer happens at the end, that's okay. Personally, I'd like to keep everything as seamless as possible. So I want to add this step to the process for you guys and show you how to keep it all completely seamless with no SSL warnings. So I'll go ahead and do this. Idea test site here, my email there. I'm going to use a DNS to validate the certificate here. We don't need to tick that, and let's accept the Let's Encrypt service agreement there and create the free SSL certificate. So we just have to wait a second, and then it's going to tell us to add this DNS record here to our site. So I'm going to add this over to our old hosting. So this is actually currently hosted on Hostinger, so I'm going to add it to the Hostinger DNS, but this will go to wherever your DNS is currently being hosted on your live website. So first, I'll copy this. This is going to be a text record, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to head over to my Hostinger DNS editor here. So I've logged into my Hostinger panel, but wherever you are currently hosted, you want to get your DNS editor, and we're going to add in a text record. So in Hostinger's case, it's under Advanced with DNS editor, but wherever your DNS manager is on your current hosting, we're going to add a text record, and the name is going to be that one there, and the value is going to be the value that we had from our tool here. So that was the value. That'll be a bit of code there. So that looks all good. And I'm going to copy that, put it in here, add that record on. That looks like it's successful. And then we can head back and we can actually do the DNS check. So with any luck, this will pass. Okay, that looks good. So it looks like we've got our certificate passed. And we can now verify our domain, and we should generate some certificates now. So it's going to give us a little pop-up ad there. So we can just click close on that one. So let's copy our certificate bundle first here. Let's copy that. Let's head back to Plesk and we'll find our security SSL here. So let's go there and we should be able to find one called manage here. So download or remove existing certificates. We click manage there and we're going to add an SSL certificate here. So I'm going to call this one temp let's encrypt. So I'll call it temp LE for this example here. And let's paste in our certificate bundle. So we're going to have our site certificate and there'll be a couple of different certificate authority certificates here. So I'm just going to cut this off there so that we can have one certificate there. And the next one goes down here, the certificate authority. We're going to need one of those. So the top one will be fine for this. And that looks all good. And we're going to go ahead and click upload. And we're going to need a private key as well. So go back to our generator here, copy the private key, and we're going to paste that private key in there as well. So that looks all good. So now I've got our private key in there and our certificate authority. Let's go ahead and upload that one. That should work all good. There we go. Got a green tick there. Now we can apply this certificate to our website. So let's go back to our websites and we should be able to add this certificate. So we go to, with our website is here, we are looking at hosting and DNS hosting settings there. And we should be able to select a certificate here. So that's our temporary Let's Encrypt certificate. Hit apply there. And that should be all good. I don't know if that'll work straight away. Like if I go back to my site here and reload, I think I'll probably have to wait a second for this to actually have a certificate. So I'm going to wait a second and come back. I noticed if I actually open a new tab and go to Idea Test Site here, it actually does work with our SSL. So this looks all good. We can actually log in here and actually upload our migration file here. So let's do that. Let's go to /wp admin and log into our WordPress using the credentials that we set up when we installed WordPress there. So go ahead and log in. Don't mix that up with your old website, because if you use a different password for the new website, it's going to be the new password. So this is our new server here, and I'm accessing it through the domain name, through that little hosts trick that we used earlier. And now we're going to actually install that plugin again. So we're going to add that new plugin. Same thing here. We upload the plugin that we downloaded earlier in the tutorial there. That's all-in-one migration version 6.77. That link is in the description. We're going to activate that plugin. There we go. And we go to all-in-one migration and we are going to import the file. So this is the file that we downloaded from our Hostinger website there. So that is Idea Test Site. There we go. Let's go ahead and import that one. This does take a long time, so I'm going to be very patient here. Depending on your upload connection and the size of your website, this can take a very long time, but I've had a lot of success where other plugins do sometimes hit a timeout error or give us problems. All-in-one migration has been very robust. Even on very slow hosting, I've had pretty good success rate with this compared to any other plugin, so I really do enjoy using this plugin more than others. So it's been a few minutes. I'm still waiting, so I'm going to come back in just a second. Awesome. So after that is finished, you'll get a dialog box here that says it's going to overwrite your website. So that is normal. We're going to click proceed there. And then we wait. So this is going to take all the files out of that one giant archive that we uploaded. And there we get a success message there. So that looks all good. Now we do need to save our permalinks structure. So we click permalink settings there. That's going to actually take us to our WordPress admin page. So we do have to log in again. Now, just be aware, this is going to be the credentials that we use on our old website. So whatever we used on our old website, we're going to log in with those username and passwords. So go ahead and log in there. And it's going to take us to our permalink settings. All we have to do is just make sure your permalinks are set up the way you had them before. In my case, it was on post name. And we click Save Changes. So that looks all good. So now we actually should have our website. If we view website, we should be able to see that the old website is on our new server now. So that looks all good. And just go through all your pages and make sure you're happy with how it's migrated over to the new server. But that looks all good. Now we are actually ready for this website to go live onto the internet. So our new server looks all ready and we can actually point our DNS over to the new server and we'll get a nice seamless migration. It'll go from Hostinger to Vultr and it'll be completely seamless with the website and the SSL domain all working perfectly as it transfers over. So I'll show you how to do that final step. Okay, so for this setup, I've actually got my domain that I bought on, I bought this over on Namecheap, Idea Test Site, and I've got the DNS pointed over to Hostinger's servers here. So they're pointed over to Hostinger's DNS and all the DNS is managed through Hostinger. So what I could do is I could go down and just change the A record, change that IP address to my new Vultr IP address, just click edit, paste my IP address in there, and I would be basically all done. It would transfer over in about 15 minutes. But what if, in a more practical sense, we wanted to get away from Hostinger completely and not use Hostinger's DNS at all? We just wanted to use our own, say, Namecheap DNS or GoDaddy DNS or wherever. Cloudflare is another popular choice. Let's go ahead and change these and put in our records in our own DNS and just get away from our old host altogether. So I'll show you how to do that right now. So what I would do here is we'd change that to Namecheap basic DNS here and click the tick. And we would want to then start adding our records in. So in the case of Namecheap, that's going to be in advanced DNS here. And we're going to start putting in our records. So I'll actually delete these out because I put some in here already. I'll show you from scratch how to do this. So we can add the record. The most important one is the root and our IP address goes in there. That is our Plesk IP address, as we talked about earlier. Let's grab that IP address there. So that definitely goes in there. That's the most important one. And the CNAME goes in there as well. So that's www. And we're going to point that to idea test site. Those are the most important ones. That'll make sure our website stays up and running. And the other ones we want to copy over from Hostinger. Let's have a look at what we've got. Probably the other really important ones are the email ones. So I'll show you the ones we want for those. We've got a DKIM for our email here. So I'm going to copy that out here. We can actually click edit. It's probably better here. Copy that. Either way is cool, but we're going to go ahead and head back here and add our text record. This is for our DKIM. We don't want the quotes on the end there though. So we want to do that without the quotes for the DKIM. And the host, we're going to have to grab that as well. So that is the Zmail domain key. There we go. So that's the first one there. This is a little tedious, but bear with me. The other things here we do need, we've got www already. What else do we actually need for email to work? Most of these we don't need at all as we're leaving Hostinger. The MX records are definitely important so we can receive our email. So mxzoho.com. So these, in the case of Namecheap, they can go in your mail settings here, but sometimes you can actually add mail MX records, but Namecheap doesn't let you add MX records in that section. You got to add them down here, but some other providers will let you add MX records alongside the other records, but let's do that here. So we've got custom MX and we are going to add them in here. So that is mxzoho.com. The host in that case there was the @ and 10 is the priority there for that one. Priority was 10 and save that in. And there should usually be another one or two email MX servers. So I'll grab the next one here. It's going to be, in this case, we've got mx2 zoho.com. If you don't know how to set up Zoho free email, I've got a tutorial on that as well. I'll link that in the description too. But mx2 Zoho, priority on that one was 20. Save that in. Come on. There we go. And MX3, the priority on that one is 50. So you should have at least 2 or 3 MX servers generally for your email. So that one is all good. In my case, I'm using Zoho, but whatever email service you're using, copy the records for your MX. And the other one that's important here is your SPF. That is the SPF record there. It looks something similar depending on what you're using, but it's not an MX record. That one is a text record, so we can add that as a text record. The value goes in there, and it doesn't need the quotes. And where was I? Host is @ again, so great. And finally, there should be one more, I think a DMARC record for our email. So if we scroll around, we should be able to find, there we go, we've got a DMARC record. The underscore DMARC is going to be this one. So this has quotes around it again. So I think it depends where you're doing this. I'm going to try doing this with no quotes. I'm pretty sure you don't use quotes around the whole thing on Namecheap, so I'll just remove them here. But some places may or may not need you to put the quotes in. And underscore DMARC was the host in this case. So that looks all good. So this should be all the DNS records we need for our website and our email in this case. If we scroll through the old records, I'm not using an FTP on this server. I'm not running an FTP subdomain and all these other things. I'm not using hosting as mail at all. I don't need any of these SSL things in here. Those are optional if you want to restrict issuing to certain providers. We don't actually need to do that. We don't need that one. Yeah, so we're basically good. the name servers are going to be our own name servers on Namecheap now. So yeah, we're basically all good. These are the only ones we need. And we're just going to test this out. I'll test the email out to make sure this is working as well. But we have to wait for all this to process over to the new IP address. I'm going to go over to DNS Checker and dnschecker.org. And let's just see how our idea test site is progressing here. We're still on the old IP address. So I'm going to come back in about 30 or 40 minutes and make sure our new IP address is being hit over on Namecheap. So it would have propagated over from Hostinger to Namecheap here, and it should be hitting our new IP address, which looks like that. So I'm going to come back. This should be out of action and our new IP address should be active. So I'm going to come back in about 30 or 40 minutes. Hopefully that's ready. Okay, coming back after an hour, we can actually refresh this and we can see it's hitting the Vultr IP address just fine. So that looks all good. It means we can actually take this part out of our host file on our PC so we can actually use the DNS for real. So Notepad, right click, run as administrator there. Run Notepad as administrator, open up your host file. Again, the host file is under C, Windows, System32, drivers, etc. You have to look at all files to see it. Hosts is what it's called. We're going to remove that line that we added earlier in the tutorial. Save that, close it. That looks all good. Now we can check our website, and my actual website still looks like it's working just fine. That looks all good. And the email itself, I've just sent a test email through and I've received it in the inbox just fine in Gmail, and it's passing its SPF, DKM, and DMARC there. So that looks like it's all working. Email's working, website's working. So it looks like we're pretty much done. There is one little thing I want to do back in Plesk. I wanted to set up SSL renewal. Now that we've got our DNS all complete, what we can do is issue the SSL. We can issue the SSL through Plesk, and that is going to let us automatically renew the certificate every 90 days because these certificates last for 90 days. So we've got our SSL here. What I want to do is issue one through actual Plesk. So we're going to reissue the certificate, and we're going to do the free Let's Encrypt provided through Plesk, the Plesk panel here. So we'll do that. Secure the domain name. We don't need to secure the wildcard. We'll do the WW. I'm not going to use webmail, and I'm not going to do any mail hosting on here. I'll do all my mail through Zoho, as I talked about earlier. So I'll set this up as my my admin email there. There we go. This does take a second here, but now that our DNS is pointed over to our Plesk server, we can use the actual Plesk panel to install the SSL certificate. And now Plesk is going to automatically manage our SSL, renew it when it expires. So that looks like it's all good. I may actually need to select that one as well. Just make sure that that's not referring to the old certificate. I'll just go and double check just to make sure that is all working as expected there. So was it under hosting, and we're looking at hosting settings there, and there. Now it's using Let's Encrypt from Plesk rather than the old one we had, that temporary Let's Encrypt one that we made through the that web tool that we used. You can use the Tips with Punch tool there, or there was SSL for free. Does that fairly well as well. Oh, and the other one I didn't mention was Zero SSL. We'll also do this as well. So any of those tools you can use to do a temporary SSL while you're waiting for the DNS to finish. When it's all finished up, we can use our panel. Now that our DNS is pointed over here, we've got our SSL being issued by the panel automatically now. So I think we're all pretty much done. We've got our website up and running on our new server now. It's all transferred away. Nothing is run through hosting, and now everything is run through our Plesk panel. Our DNS is run through our own domain, hosted on Namecheap, and our email is hosted on, what was it? Zoho. Sorry, Zoho Mail. That's a free one we can use with our own domain. So that is pretty much all there is to it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, this was fairly convoluted, and there's lots of different combinations you can run this through. You don't have to use certain domain providers. You could use something else other than Namecheap. You don't have to use, obviously, you don't have to use Vultr. You could use DigitalOcean or RackNerd. The list goes on. You don't have to be transferring away from hosting it. This will transfer any website away from any WordPress hosting, for example. So this is just an example, and you can fill in the gaps where you need. So hopefully that was all good anyway. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.